hard.
Is there a public copy there? Just the one sheet, huh?
There's a quorum.
There's 5, yeah.
Yeah, Greg's coming too, he'll be here in a sec.
Oh, okay.
Cold enough for everybody?
This is EDA meeting 11/17/14.
It's gotten old already.
Yeah.
Then it's not even Thanksgiving yet.
My wife and I keep saying, we're gonna go south for winter, right? Except my wife's the primary caregiver for her 100-year-old mother.
So,
I said, we're never gonna go south, she's gonna outlive both of us.
Yeah.
Still does pretty well.
Well, it's noon. Can we call the meeting to order?
Sure.
Okay, call the meeting to order. And we need to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Todd, seconded by Don. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Business.
So I believe Greg is on his way in, but we did some checking on the Clark Station. We talked about this earlier, about the potential for since that property has gone tax forfeit, that the city may be able to obtain that property from the county and or clean it up or sell it or do whatever. So we had heard that there might have been an environmental assessment done on the property, and it's not been done on the Clark Station property, but it was done on a property close to it. And so we were able to obtain that report, which showed the closer that it got to the Clark Station, the more contaminants there was. And then Greg also contacted MPCA because they had a report on the property as well.
On the property as well, and it basically showed the same thing. In terms of the closer that it got to the station here, the more that the contaminants had. The
Most of the property across the street, was that contaminated?
This parcel had a leak on it, yes. The former volume liquor store.
Oh, I didn't know that was a gas station.
Yep.
Okay.
This one did not have a leak detected on it, but it's strange that the farther you go north, the higher the concentrations get.
How old was that?
Before Ambiance went in there, so 2000.
Okay.
6, something like that is when I think they bought it.
Yeah.
Anyways, the odd thing about it is these concentrations are concentrations of gasoline, and it's my understanding that at the old Clark Station they had mainly diesel over there. They had gas
That's a
as
full
well.
service gas,
Okay.
yeah. Clarks are always.
So there may be some contaminants over there, but nothing that was found in the report from the MPCA or this particular study. So what we're looking at is if we do obtain that parcel, we would then take out the tanks and see what's down there. To remove the tanks with all the proper paperwork and such, it's right around the $8,500 mark in order to do that.
To take out the tanks,
To take out the tanks, yeah.
then to clean up.
Well, that's the other thing. If you don't disturb the soil, you don't have to clean it up. So if you're digging in for footings and you expose or disturb the contaminated soil, then you have to dispose of it properly. But as long as it's currently in its current state, you don't have to do anything with it.
And that includes removing the tanks. So
That's
we
correct.
could remove the tanks without having to do anything with the soils.
True.
Well, if the tanks leak though, the soil's gonna be contaminated right by the tanks.
If it were the tanks, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know where the leak, if there was a leak at that site,
Well,
or if there was, where it came from. Yeah.
Well, the tanks have been removed from this site?
From this one, I believe they have. They were in the back, is my understanding.
Okay. Well, they may have even been above ground then.
it's funny to me because when you look at the elevations, Ambiance is lower than,
The back side.
Yeah,
the
you know,
west side.
and-
Yeah.
stuff doesn't run uphill,
True.
you know?
Well, actually with seepage though, in sand, which I'm guessing is around there,
That's.
it will suck things up. Am I correct in saying that?
To
It
some
does it with
extent,
water, it
yes.
does it with other, I would assume it does it with other things also.
Well, you'll have to, once you dig in, you know, you're gonna see, you know, the soils around there, if it's contaminated, I mean, then you're gonna have to dig all of that out and replace it.
No, we don't have to, is what he was saying.
No, but if you're gonna change,
If there's,
if there's pollution around that tank, you're gonna have to clean that up.
If you disturb the soil,
Yeah,
yeah.
and digging the tank out's disturbing the
Just
soil.
the area that you dig out, so if you're taking out the tank and you do a 4 foot by 4 foot, that area you would have to
Clean up.
clean up,
But if
But
you're
not the
not,
surrounding
but not the
stuff.
surrounding
Okay.
stuff.
but what about knocking the buildings down then?
What you disturb, again, going down to the footings and stuff, that you'd have to
Okay.
clean up, but the other stuff outside the envelope, you would not.
But you could also just take down the what's exposed part
True.
and leave the
Just leave
concrete.
the
I mean, you
footings,
could just
yeah.
take the building part of it down
Right.
and level it and then not expose the,
And you kind of touched on
Not
another
the
thing,
concrete.
with that elevation difference, if there was a leak there, you would start to see some of that down at that lower elevation, but kind of by the back parking lot.
Mhm.
I mean, water and everything else is gonna go to the path of least resistance. So if there was a leak here, you'd start to see some of that shown,
That way.
Is anything been tested down below that lot?
not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Not, well,
Would be
this lot,
interesting, 'cause
over here they did some
Okay.
testing. And I've got that back in my office here, but not.
see, that doesn't, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference even if, because of the time it's been there, if there was any contamination, that stuff is leaked out.
It's-
But
yeah,
the
the tanks are
soil,
empty,
but the
yeah.
soil will still be there
Yeah,
because
okay.
we had that problem on the west side when
Yeah.
we financed one of the places over there, they had to dig it out. And I mean, as soon as you took the tanks out, you could just smell it, and so they had to take all the dirt out, all around it.
And if you're gonna tear the building down, you're not gonna wanna leave the pad there from the old one, because if someone wants to build a new
Well,
one.
that was gonna, that's, I'm a dollar and cents guy. So according to what Greg is saying, we could just pull the tanks, you recap it over the top, we're done, we could be, okay?
We could be, but.
Could be, here's the kicker. What's the property worth if it's set like that versus what if it's cleaned up? I would have to believe it'd be a big difference, because if anybody's gonna come in and build on that piece of property, they're gonna get stuck with the cleaning bill.
Well-
And that may make it too expensive for them.
They
to
might
wanna
not
take
buy it either though.
That's the point. They may look at that and go, I don't wanna take on that headache.
Right, but one of the things that we can look at here is if we obtain the property, remove the tanks and do the environmental assessment to find out what the contamination
Yeah.
is. Once the property is sold and you have an end use for it, then you can go back to deed and apply for grants to do the cleanup.
okay.
And the demo,
All right.
of, you know,
Yeah.
which right now, if we do it and we don't have an end use for the property at this
Yeah,
point,
we can't apply.
it really, I mean, we can apply, but our chances of getting any type of a grant to do that are minimal because we don't have an end use for the property. So if we were to obtain the property, at least remove the tanks, we can apply for a grant to do the testing, the environmental assessment on it, and then get the tanks removed, and then once we know what's there, then we can decide, okay, do we wanna take it down, do we wanna wait, depending on what potentially goes in there. We could do a redevelopment tax increment because it's polluted. We could, apply for a grant to do
Got it.
it. But it would depend on the end use of the property.
All right, next question. What does it cost to do that, just a basic test like that, soil test? Because I've got an idea. You remember how this is an elevated lot right here? You could do some testing right below that lot, and you would know if you got a problem or not. You know in a heartbeat. But I don't know what the testing costs. It costs a couple $1,000s to test, and then you might as well.
But we're still gonna have to go through an environmental if we do
Yeah.
anything with the
Yeah.
property because it was a gas
Okay, so
station.
either way, we
We're still
gotta
gonna
do
have
that.
to go through an environmental.
So that price is right around, ballpark numbers is $5,000.
So that was my guess, yeah.
Well, and what other options do we have? Do we want it to sit like that forever?
Right.
Yeah, I
With,
know. We don't have a lot of,
Eyesore, knowing that it's contaminated ground close to the Mississippi, as far as I'm concerned, it's our duty
If it
environmental wise
if it was contaminated though, the water that, it's already, all the years it's
Flushed
sat,
out.
it's already flushed to the river, just like over there by Larson's when they had that, the soil right there, you might have to take it out, but the pollution is already gone. That's Probably in the ocean by now.
Well,
I don't know.
and then but if it still has that stench when you dig it out,
You gotta take it out.
well, I'm just wondering if it
Well,
still
there
doesn't have
again,
some fluids there.
we don't wanna
still
do it
smells
now
like it.
because that would all come out of our pocket if we do it now versus if we can sell the property, then we can apply for grants.
But we have, how much does it cost to buy the property?
Well, and that was when I talked to the county, you know, they said, make us an offer, so to me, we would go to them and say, hey, it's gonna cost us, you know, $9,000 to remove the tanks, plus the potential cleanup, plus whatever we do for the environmental assessment, we'll give you
Yeah.
$1 for it and take
That's
care of it.
exactly my
And
thinking.
my guess is they're gonna say, okay, because as it gets cleaned up, then, you know, the potential of it going back on the tax rolls, or even if we use it for a parking lot, at least
Yeah.
it's cleaned up.
Or else they can clean it up and we'll buy it from them.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, that was my point, that's
Yeah.
why $1 will probably do it.
Right.
It's out of their hair.
Yeah.
So, we gotta make a decision, I guess.
Mr.
Don't
President,
have to, but.
may I
We
make
don't
a
have-
comment?
We don't have to.
No, we can leave it sit, yeah. Well, that was the decision, do we touch it or leave it, I guess, is the decision I'm talking about.
It's,
Greg,
I think
are
it
you
makes
the
sense to
president?
clean it up.
Yes, I am.
May I just mention, I just talked with Brian on my way over here and I told him where I was going and he said, remind the group that Rich Carlson told the city council that there had been an environmental study done on this property.
There hasn't, we've checked and there
Oh.
is not one done.
Well, that's odd that Rich would have told the council that.
Okay, so what are our options? What do you guys,
Well, first option's simple, walk away, don't touch it, leave it sit as it is. And really, there's only one other option if we're gonna do it. If we're gonna take it, we gotta pull the tanks.
well, and this will have to go before the council and the council will decide it, so.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I would make a motion that we acquire the property and pull the tanks, only doing the remediation of the soil that we disturbed.
How about if, can I?
Sure,
So what if we obtain the property and then work towards getting some grants to pull the
You think
tanks
we-
or to do the
Can we
environmental
get grants for that,
stuff?
you think?
We might be able to, the next round of grants is in March, so that would give us some time to do the applications.
All right, that
And
makes
then
better sense.
And if, once we own the property, you know, if the
We
county
can
would
come
grant
back.
it to us, then, you know, so the idea thing would be for us to obtain the property for as little as possible, you know, like $1. And then we'll work towards doing grants, to do the environmental assessment. I don't know if we wanted, you know, remove the tanks before or after. We'll look for some funding sources,
Yeah.
grant sources to do that as well.
But that gives us time to figure out options.
Right,
Okay,
so
all right.
it's better if we.
Let's keep it simple, let's
Yeah.
why
just.
why don't we, find out what the county will take for it first before we do anything?
Okay, let's modify the motion to say, let's approach the county to see if they're willing to give us the property, literally almost $1, whatever, cheap as possible. And then we can continue to study
Then
the
we can
problem,
continue to study it.
because we can apply for grants. If we get grants to pull the tanks, fantastic. If we get grants to do the assessment, fantastic.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
Further comments or questions? Lori or Greg, anything?
So it's just to
See what we can buy the property for.
Pursue
Okay.
purchase.
not go any further.
All we have to do is tell them it's what it's gonna cost us, and maybe they wanna do all that work, and then they can sell the piece of property.
Do we, and just as part of the discussion, then if, say they sell it to us for $1, then do we have to come back and have a meeting to pursue the grants, or can we just go ahead and pursue them once we own it?
That would be,
Another
that could be a
EDA.
second motion then from the EDA,
Okay,
is
let's
that if
handle
they
this,
agree to give
because I
us the
hate to,
$1.
Well, I have
we
another
get it
meeting.
for
I think if
$1.
we're gonna sell it to us cheap, we should just do it.
Okay.
You know? But I suppose then we need to set boundaries, don't we?
Well, let's handle this first motion to seek that, and
Okay.
we'll take a vote on that, and then if you want to, if someone wants to bring up another motion.
All right.
Any further discussion on this motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. So if we want to, if they say that it's gonna be $1, or give it to us, in essence, how do we wanna go about potentially purchasing it?
Well, I was
Do we
gonna
wanna
say,
set a
do we put
limit on what we
limitations?
wanna pay
Yeah.
for it, and
Yeah,
if we can get it for this amount, purchase it and seek grants to, go in the direction of cleanup? Is that what we're thinking?
yeah, I think so. I don't know how to word it though.
Well, if they don't give us the property, we can always come back and revisit
Yeah.
it, but if they do give us the property, then you can give staff direction to seek grants and start, you know,
Right.
figuring out the process of
Right.
the tank removal, the environmental, the grant, potential of grants and.
Is it easier for your guys to just do the step by step? In other words, should we put a motion out there already that says if they're gonna give it to us cheap, just do it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine, because then that would give us time, let's see, our meeting was in October, so our next meeting would be in January, and the grant, I don't believe is due until March, so if the
Okay.
county's willing to give us the property, then from now till the next meeting, we can figure out what the process is gonna be, start working to that end, and then be able to report that at our regular.
So what's a
meeting in
reasonable
January.
number for that? Do we put 1,000? Do we put 500? Do we do 100? You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we have to put a dollar on it.
I think we have to make it,
I,
yeah.
you know, I would say if we wanna go 1,000 or, well, at least we've got,
All right. So,
But that's-
so let's rewrite it. Let's write the second motion to say that if we can acquire that property from the county for less than $1,000, we would recommend, and this has to go through the council, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would recommend to the council that we go ahead and acquire the property and then begin the study process.
okay, we have a second?
So,
Further discussion on that? Lori, does that encapsulate
Yep,
everything?
that's.
And see, that gives her authority already to start looking into grants and everything.
Okay, no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. That's it.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, adjourn.
He got it.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Vote.
I'm hungry. We're going home.